Get started. Good afternoon. My name is Joe Swimmer. I'm Executive Director of Episcopal Parish Network. We're so pleased that you're joining us today for this conversation about legacy giving, planned giving, something that's so important to our churches, particularly in this moment when, as many of you all will have heard, there is the greatest transfer of wealth in generations. And so we are joined today by a wonderful team from Horizons Stewardship. Joe Park and Ashley Cheung, who are going to lead us in a conversation about this. We would invite you to please put where you're dialing in from into the chat so they have an idea who's joining them today. Also, when you have questions or comments, please put those into the chat and they will get to them throughout the session. We're looking forward to sending this recording out to everyone when this is wrapped up. So please be on the lookout for that. It will also have the materials. Finally, please do remember that we will be gathering in Charlotte, North Carolina next March 3rd through 6th. We will have our friends from Horizons with us as well as others talking about some of the many important things going on in the church, and excited to have you join us there in Charlotte. In the meantime, look for our upcoming webinars and other topics besides planned giving. And I'm truly grateful for Joe and Ashley joining us today. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Joe. Joe Park, thanks so much.
Hello, everyone. As you heard, I'm Joe Park. I'm CEO of Horizon Stewardship, and we are a ministry that's been around for about 30 years, helping local churches and faith-based nonprofits grow disciples and fund their ministry needs. In that time, we've raised a little over $10 billion for local churches in annual capital, planned giving, and other forms of generosity development. When Joe and I were talking about a webinar on planned giving, it was easy for me to think who I wanted to bring. I met Ashley several years ago. She's going to tell her own story, but I met her several years ago when she was doing planned giving and development at Church of the Resurrection. That's the largest United Methodist church, pastored by Adam Hamilton. And as big as they were, they had really not focused on planned giving. And so Ashley was their first hire to do that, and she just did a fabulous job. Just a little bit more before I introduce Ashley about resources that are available to you from Horizon Stewardship. We have a resource library called giving365.com. I'll put that in the chat here in a minute, giving365.com. And it is full of all kinds of resources that are free to you to use and apply. We believe that generosity is largely a byproduct of discipleship. And we believe that churches are most effective when they have what we call an integrated funding strategy. So this is working in the areas of annual giving, capital giving, plan giving, and asset stewardship, as well as special giving. It isn't one of those things. They're not separate silos, but we work to draw them all into a congruent communication strategy for the church. So it doesn't really matter where you start. We begin to lay that foundation, and you'll find that in the way that we talk about things in Giving 365. So with no further ado, I want to introduce to you one of my favorite people, Ashley. She communicates around plan giving in a way that is incredibly unique. Most plan giving experts that I talk to are a little on the dry side. You're not going to find that with Ashley. So, Ashley, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be here today, and we'll just get started.
Awesome. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm in Kansas City. It's 2 o'clock here. And so I'll say good afternoon It is a pleasure to be here with you today. I, believe it or not, was raised as an Episcopalian in Wichita, Kansas. I saw somebody in the chat from Wichita already. But I fell in love with a Methodist in college. So as things go, I became a United Methodist while I was a collegiate and went on to seminary as a Methodist and have been serving as a part of the Methodist tradition for about 25 years. When my kids were tiny, I took a church break briefly and became a collegiate fundraiser. And spent about 5 years as a major gifts and planned giving fundraiser for a university here in Kansas and fell in love with planned giving. And we were connected with Church of the Resurrection here in Leawood, Kansas, and they opened up a position to be a planned giving specialist for the church. And so I started working for the church in planned giving ministry, and I served there for about 30 months in planned giving ministry and had the opportunity to work with about 130 families to create a planned gift for the Resurrection Foundation. And that was about a $28 million ministry impact from those 130 families. And so that's how I'm here is I'm really passionate about planned giving because I see it as an act of discipleship. And I believe that persons who went to seminary, whether you have a business background or not, can be a part of planned giving too, because it really is an act of discipleship. So I'll start with that. That's my brief introduction, and I'm turning it over to Joe, and we'll have a conversation.
All right. So, if there's anybody who's thinking, well, oh my gosh, Adam Hamilton's church is so big, nothing Ashley has to say will apply to me. Uh, she has all that local parish ministry, so she understands churches of all size. But what's interesting about Church of the Resurrection is they have 7 different campuses, and they're from a few hundred people to very, very large. And so all over the Kansas City area in different urban and suburban primarily, but she was working in all sizes of churches while she was at Church of the Resurrection. So just getting us started. Ashley, the big question, why would a church want to consider creating a planned giving ministry?
That is a great question. I think maybe my favorite question to begin with, actually. And I want to start first, before we move into that question, Joe, by answering the question, what is a planned gift?
Mm.
When I went to seminary at age 23, I had $942. I'm actually not lying about that. And picked up, moved from Wichita to Kansas City, and I had no idea what planned giving was. So if you don't know what planned giving is, that's okay. Planned giving is typically understood as a gift that a person sets aside through their estate. Most often, a planned gift will come to your church upon the death of the donor or upon the death of the donor's partner. And usually, those gifts can come as a bequest from a will or a trust. They can come through a life insurance policy designation. They can come through a 401k, an IRA. They can come through real estate proceeds or perhaps appreciated assets. Um, as Joe mentioned, giving is an act of discipleship, and there are really 3 ways that people can give. One, through their annual ministry fund gift. Two, through capital improvement, capital campaign generosity. And 3, through planned giving. I've had the opportunity to serve in churches that are about 100 members all the way up to 25,000 members. The church I'm serving now is a big steeple city church. We have about 450 in worship right now on a weekly basis. So I've been in big and small. And in big and small, I might wonder, do I have time to worry about planned giving? I'm already working on our annual fund. I'm working on our capital campaign. I may not have time, but I actually am here to advocate that you absolutely have time. And there's a reason why, and that's because it is discipleship. There's really 2 aspects, Joe, in my opinion, on why plan giving matters. And the first is that it gives your donor, it gives your church member the opportunity to create a discipleship impact. I mean, they have the opportunity through plan giving to answer the question. This is my favorite question in the entire world is how can I help God transform God's world through a planned gift? I mean, it's audacious that are about using the resources. So if they're passionate about the church, that's important to them through planned giving. They can model for their family members what it means to be generous, and they can model for church members what it means to be generous, and it can create a congregational impact. And this is really important to consider. Joe Swimmer already mentioned this. The greatest wealth transfer is happening right now. Here in Kansas, in the next 20 years, we are anticipating a transfer of wealth of $300 billion. Of that $300 billion, we're assuming that $12.5 billion will be given to charities. And so if churches are simply asking, they can be a part of receiving approximately $2.9 billion based off of that 23% generosity marker that we see in our communities right now. That's really, it's a discipleship impact. It's an impact on the donors' lives, an offering that they get to make, and then it can create an incredible congregational impact because you would have resources to continue to steward on behalf of those families.
So, actually, if a church wants to begin this, how do they go about creating a planned giving ministry?
Hey, that's a great question. I really think, gosh, I know what it's like. I'm in charge of our ministry fund at our church. I'm connected. We just finished a $13.4 million capital campaign with Horizons at the church I'm serving now. You might think, gosh, I don't have time to worry about this, but it's actually quite simple. I really think there's about 4 steps that one needs to take to create a planned giving community ministry. And the first step is simply to create a really strong planned giving ministry team. So, when I'm thinking about this team in your church, every church has them. We're talking about adding and connecting with, inviting members in your congregation to be a part of this who either live generously. So perhaps they're lead donors, or perhaps they're just simply your most faithful donors, the people who are so committed to your church with their generosity. They make great members of a planned giving ministry team. Those Pied Piper members, I call them, that are over the age of 50, that just draw people in. When something's important to them, it becomes important to others, right? So those Pied Piper members who are of the age that they might be considering their own planned giving gift to your church. And then gift planning experts. So people in your church who are attorneys, people in your church who are accountants, people in your church who are fundraisers, people in your church who are financial advisors, all make great lay members on your planned giving ministry team. I also, step 2, is to get yourself some experts. So I went to seminary. Many of you probably did the same. And you know what they don't teach us in seminary? How to be a planned giving expert. And so I encourage you to find your own planned giving experts. If you were United Methodist, I would tell you to go to your local United Methodist Foundation. In your denomination, I know you have some great resources, and Episcopal Parish Network can help you find some of those national resources and even local resources to set up your own planned giving ministry. Horizons can help you set up a planned giving ministry, but rely on experts. You don't need to know everything. You just need to know who you can bring into your ministry team, as well as your experts in the community that can come alongside you. The third step is really to create a clear plan for stewarding this kind of generosity through funds. So, at the Resurrection Foundation, we had 5 primary funds that we invited people to give to. And those funds, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But also, one thing that's really important before we get into funds at your for your endowment, in addition to relying on your experts to help you, they can help you set up your gift acceptance policy or update your gift acceptance policy so that you can receive planned gifts well. They can also help you set up a set apart endowment fund or an investment fund for your planned gifts. I think that's really important. And then they can provide coaching. Here in Kansas, our Methodist Foundation, the leaders from the Methodist Foundation will actually sit down with clergy and help coach them on how to invite people to be generous with planned giving. So that's all to say that you have your team in place, you have your experts in place, you have your planned giving fund, your endowment fund in place, and now you get to talk about how you want to receive those gifts. At the Resurrection Foundation, we had about 30 funds that we could receive gifts into. They had set those up before I had gotten there. I recommend churches never have more than five. I really even say four. Unrestricted, of course, the most beautiful opportunity to be generous can come through unrestricted giving, because then the church of the future can utilize those gifts for whatever they need. Discipleship, you could have a discipleship fund if really somebody wants to come alongside discipleship and worship in the church. Maybe a missions fund, that's always got people's hearts too. And then perhaps a facilities fund. But really, I think most churches, as they're setting up a planned giving ministry, don't need to consider anything more than those four funds. And if they want to have directed giving, what we would call what we would call donor restricted funds at Resurrection Foundation. This was a little tricky getting passed, but once I got it passed, it was really important. Once we worked together to get it passed, it was really important. Our donor restricted funds could not receive, they needed to be $250,000 to be endowed. Now, that sounds like a lot, but we wanted to make sure that any donor restricted gift we received would absolutely make an impact year after year after year after year. Because with an endowed fund, we only used a 4% draw off of that fund on an annual basis. So $250,000 was a $10,000 draw. And so to set up a donor restricted fund, that's what the minimum was. Now, here in Johnson County, our typical estate settles out between $2 to $4 million. So it was a tithe of the estate typically that could fund a donor restricted fund. We also could receive endowed funds at a minimum of $50,000, again, with the intention of a 10-year or $10,000 impact over a 5-year basis. We wanted to make sure that we weren't receiving teeny tiny funds that we couldn't make an incredible impact with year over year. Okay, so we've set up our team. We have our experts, we have our fund in place, we have our funds set up in the church, no more than four. And then the last step is determine through your gift acceptance policy work what gifts you want to receive. Now, this is a pretty important step. You don't want to miss this when you're setting up your gift acceptance policy. Some of the really, really wonderful assets that persons can utilize for a planned gift obviously include a bequest from a will or a trust. That's usually a gift that will need to be done with an attorney. Another option is to utilize what I really encourage people to add to their gift acceptance policy are IRAs, because being the recipient of an IRA gift through a planned gift is actually really wonderful for the donor, because IRAs can cause some tax issues for family members who receive the IRAs. So it's a great asset for persons to use when they're making a planned gift. Bank account transfer on death, that's pretty simple. Life insurance policies, making designations through life insurance policies. I already talked about attorney supported wills and trust bequest. Health savings accounts, this is kind of an easy one for people to choose to utilize for a beneficiary designation. Broker supported opportunities would include appreciated assets like stocks. Trustee supported assets might include proceeds from the sale of real estate, proceeds from the sale of a vehicle, cars, obviously I just said that, jewelry, or art. Now, I really encourage you not to get into the business of doing real estate yourself. At Resurrection, we typically encourage people to invite their trustee to sell their home, and then we would be honored to receive the resources from the sale of the home. But we wanted to avoid as much as possible getting involved in the actual sale of the home. So, that was a lot.
I know. Two thoughts. One is just I really would love to underscore that setting up these broad funds that allow you to use the funds broadly. We spend a lot of time with churches that have 30 different funds, and one of them was set up for something so specific we couldn't find a way to use it, or there were so many we couldn't make a big impact. We just had these little areas that they could invest in. So unwinding those is possible, but complicated. So if you start on the front end and limit those, I also want to point out that if somebody wants to give a smaller gift, letting that amortize over that, Ashley's example says a 5 year period of time. So if somebody wants to give $50,000, then that's $10,000 impact gifts that can be given in a specific area. And of course, if that's invested, then the proceeds from that would actually grow that a little bit.
Mhm.
So, actually, you talked about the why. You've talked to our the structure and the why. You've talked about some of the ways to manage the process. What are the critical documents to put in place if we're getting started, or if we're looking at an endowment that has not been active for a number of years and you're wanting to revitalize that? What are the places that people will want to verify exist and exist in a way that is helpful?
That's a great question. Real quick, I'm noticing in the chat before we get off top too far away from where we were on assets you want to consider as you're creating your gift acceptance policy, which I'm going to again revisit in a second. Health savings accounts, IRAs, life insurance policies, bank accounts, all four of those different avenues of generosity can be self-supported, where people can literally, like, I could log into my 401k account today or my 403b account today and make my local church a recipient, a beneficiary of those resources. And so health savings account is actually the same. You could log into your health. You need to actually have beneficiaries to receive your health savings account. And you probably did that in the office when you set up your health savings account. But it's a great asset to utilize for generosity because it's a really simple asset, along with those others, to create a planned gift in 15 minutes or less. Documents. Again, going back to the most important document you're going to work on as you set up your planned giving ministry or revitalize your planned giving ministry is your gift acceptance policy. Now, this is one of those things where if you want to first look and see if your church has one, and I hope they do, but you want to make sure that if you have one, that it also can receive, it has directions on how to receive a planned gift. So I was actually connected to a church when my kids were teeny tiny and I lived in California. I was connected to a church that received a house from the organist who had served at the church for 50 years. It was a beautiful gift to the church. Unfortunately, that church had an awesome gift acceptance policy in place and they knew precisely how to receive that gift. So that's a really, really, really important document. That's where you're going to list the assets you can receive. That's where you're going to have information about who needs to approve the gifts to make sure that those larger gifts can be received. You'll also have what kinds of assets you can receive. Rely on your expert here. All these words may sound scary, but they're not. There are plenty of people that can come alongside you to help you with this. And that's why you want to have that awesome team and those experts in place to support you. Gift acceptance policy, number one. Number two would be any bylaws you need to put in place for your local parish so that they can come alongside this process in a way that's going to create life and light and not confusion or concern. And then the third, this is what's fun, is marketing materials. At Resurrection Foundation, we had a great, and I highly recommend if you Google Resurrection Foundation, you can get into their files real easily and they share everything. But you can see we had a really simple but impactful web page that folks could come and learn about planned giving, and a really, really robust FAQ section for people who are just simply dipping their toes in the water of estate giving and planned giving. We had a brochure that also had that FAQ where if I were meeting with a potential donor in our congregation, I could leave a piece with them that explained the why of planned giving. I'd say feel free to include having that on your to-do list with your committee. The third I used, and I was full-time, well, 30 hours a week as a planned giving specialist for them. So it's a little different. But I did have a plan giving slide deck that I would sometimes go through with donors who like details. And so that was a helpful tool, but it was real simple. It was 6 slides. Actually, Joe has a copy of that. We have a copy of that we put together for Horizons, and we'd be happy to share that with you. Um, Video stories. We had some really great stories that came along in my 30 months there, and we did video. We videoed those donors sharing their why for why they created a plan gift. And it doesn't have to be slick and fancy at all. It can be with an iPhone, and it can be gentle, and it can be organic. But those stories matter. I am inspired by stories, and I think so many people around plan giving are inspired by stories. And so capture those stories as you encounter planned gifts in your congregation. And then the last document I want to talk about, which is almost as important as a gift acceptance policy, is what we called at the Resurrection Foundation while I served there the donor declaration. And I'm going to pull it up in a screen share. Joe, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. Yay, technology. All right. So this is a really important document. So you've shared a sermon. Let's just imagine your church has decided you want to enter or re-enter into plan giving. You're teaching, you're preaching, you're inviting people to consider being generous, and then they go do it. They go and they set up their 401k and they make a beneficiary designation to your church, or they work with their attorney to create a gift through their will or their trust. And they come to you then and say, preacher, I've done this. This is awesome. I'm so excited to be generous in this way. And you get to say, first, thank you. We're so honored to receive your generosity. We are so blessed by your kindness and can't wait to see what kind of an impact it's going to make. Second, can we have a cup of coffee in the next couple of weeks to complete a donor declaration together? This is a written declaration where you get to sit down with that gorgeous donor and help them fill out information that you'll want to have on file so that you can properly steward their gift in the future. Obviously, it's got the demographic information at the top, which is amazing. But secondly to that is what type of gift. They're going to share what kind of asset they've selected to share their planned gift with the church. This is important to know because if they let you know it's their IRA and their IRA is coming from Morgan Stanley, you'll know when that gift comes what it is. The third thing on this document that's really special is the opportunity for them to let you know what kind of impact they want to make through the funds, more or less, that you have available. Obviously, unrestricted is right there at the top. I also have here discipleship, missions, and then facility maintenance. And then if they wanted to create a fund, again, our minimums were 250,000 for endowed and 50,000 for non-endowed. That would be where they could create a fund. And that would need to be approved by your committee, that fund, so that you don't end up with a purple dinosaur stuffed animal fund. We don't need that in most churches. So you want to make sure if people want to create a fund, like Joe said, that it would be impactful and could make a difference with the size of the fund. Then at the bottom, underneath those funds, we have listed kind of an estimate of what the plan gift might be. There's a reason why this is on here. People might say, I don't know why we'd want to know that, but when I was working at a university, we received a plan gift from someone who had told us the plan gift was going to be $50,000 when they set it up. And by the time that person died, it was over $500,000. So because they had let us know it was $50,000, we wanted to make sure, checking in with the trustee, that the gift we received was the gift that was intended. And so that can go both ways. If someone tells you it's 50,000 and you receive 1,000, You could check in and just make sure the gift you received was what was intended. And if it was significantly different, you'd want to make sure that you were checking in with the trustee. After that, we invite folks to share their family, executor, or trustee's name, the email, and preferred phone number. I would say, I would always invite people, who is it that you want me to call or email and thank when your gift arrives? And so they would share that information and then they get to sign it. And it's almost like watching them. It's nearly a sacrament getting to watch them sign this document because they are making an offering to God that can help God create an incredible impact through your plan giving ministry. Where I serve at Resurrection, but then where I serve now, we kept all gift amounts always confidential. That was nobody's business, whether it was a $4,000 gift or a $4 million gift, it didn't matter. That's not what plan giving's about. But we would invite people to consider if they wanted to be a part of the Resurrection Foundation's Legacy Society. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But I would say the two most important things you can do, get that gift acceptance policy in place and make sure you have a donor declaration for folks to fill out when they let you know that they have set aside a planned gift for your church. And then the marketing in between is just fun.
A couple of thoughts about what Ashley said. First, this donor declaration form that you see is going to be attached to the recording when you get it. So feel free to use that. If you have a number of funds and you list that the ones that you prefer, you're directing people to it, there's a place for you could put a place for other where those could be written in, but you're beginning to move people in the direction that you want to go. And my experience is when people understand why that is and the impact that they're still going to be able to make, most folks will cooperate happily with the request of the church. Second thing is this donor declaration form makes it look easy and approachable for people who have not used it before. This is not something that I came up with. This was something Ashley brought to Church of the Resurrection. But would you tell them what you did on All Saints Sunday with your donor declaration form?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And we're gonna actually, that's my next discussion.
Oh, well, we can hold it for that
Perfect
if you want.
timing, Joe.
All
Actually,
right, spinning
no,
that
you just asked the
direction.
question I needed you to ask me is actually this is how do we invite people to become donors? This is a great question, right? So you've put your team in place, you've got your experts, you've done your hard work about getting the right documents in place, you've got your funds in place, you have it all done, and now you're like, where do I go from here? And that is how do we invite donors to be generous? And so I would say it's really all centered around the word intention. So it's kind of three steps in four parts. The first step that we used at the Resurrection Foundation is to worship with intention. And so, obviously, right, we always attempt to worship with intention, but even around planned giving, we attempt to worship with intention. So every year at Resurrection Foundation, or at Resurrection, the Resurrection Foundation would have Resurrection Foundation weekend. And we often would choose to have that either at Memorial Day, All Saints Day, or it could be embedded in our stewardship campaign each year, where one Sunday was set apart to invite people to consider the discipleship act of creating a legacy gift, right? So it was a part of the service. We celebrated the Resurrection Foundation. We'd have volunteers on site that could answer questions they might have about the Resurrection Foundation or about planned giving. Again, that's your original team of awesome, smart people serving alongside you in that capacity. And then after that worship service, at that worship service, we would have donor declarations on hand, as well as our brochure and our impact report, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. But we'd actually have those things on hand. So if Sally came up to the table and said, I want more information about this, I've already done this. Sometimes this happened too. I've already done this with my attorney. I've set aside a tithe from my estate to support the church. And Sally could then take home a donor declaration, complete that on her own, or come back and have a cup of coffee and complete that with one of our teammates or volunteers. But they could also take it home even if they hadn't created a donor declaration, because it would give them the chance to think through what kind of gift they want to create. And then they could help us receive that gift better by completing that form once they've created that gift. Um, so we had the once a year kind of Resurrection Foundation focused worship service, but then throughout the year, we would feed Adam stories about plan giving generosity that were kind of remarkable. And then he would preach into those. He would just kind of drip, drip those into his sermons throughout the year, so that we were kind of always reminding folks throughout the year that they too can consider what it means to create a planned gift, and why they would want to create a planned gift as an act of discipleship. In addition to worshiping with intention, we also attempted to care with intention too. And so this was kind of where my role at Resurrection Foundation came in, as I would sit down with folks one on one and help them learn more about plan giving, discuss the kind of why they might consider creating a plan gift and how they can help God transform God's world through plan giving. And then I could even help. I mean, this information I'm sharing with you, I had that short 6 slide deck that I could share with them if they needed kind of step by step instructions on how to create a plan gift. So that was often with kind of two groups of people. One, people, those magic people over the age of 50 who are in the process of setting up their estate, updating their estate, or again, are just incredibly generous to your parish. Or two, people who would what we call check the box on their annual stewardship card. I've got a sample of this too, and I'll pull it up on the screen share. We actually, at the Resurrection Foundation and at the church I serve now as well, every year on our on the stewardship card that we would invite people to fill out with their estimate of giving, we actually had on this card, in addition to their demographic information, their telephone number, their phone number, the gift they were offering on an annual basis to the church, we had these two questions available right on the card, because again, it was a reminder that this was another way to be generous to God through the church. And that first box would say, I or we have created a planned gift to church through our state. Or the second line would say, I would like to learn more about creating a planned gift to the church through my or our estate. And so this was an opportunity for us to have a list annually of people either who've already done this and then they needed to complete a donor declaration, or people who wanted to learn more about the process. And so that was how we would care with intention and meet with donors one on one. We also taught or tried to teach with intention. And so there were a couple of things that we did annually at Resurrection Foundation and even at the church I'm serving now. Is once a year we offered an estate planning seminar, and it was completely free um, for the potential donors to participate in. It was for every church member to participate in, and it was really about how do we set up our how do we set up our estate, and how do we take good care of our estate. And we see that as a opportunity for us to help disciple our members so that their children, their family members, their friends have an easier time helping to help with their estate when the time comes. That was hosted by local estate planning attorneys who volunteered their time. But our United Methodist Foundation here in Kansas also provided those for churches who weren't resurrection size, that couldn't provide those for themselves. So you all might have the opportunity to lean into some of your resources in that way too. We also provided something called Binder for Life through Resurrection Foundation, or through Resurrection. And it was really important. And it was the opportunity to help our church members get their estates in order again in a 3 to 4 week class. And one of the tasks in that was on how to be generous. And so that was another way that folks could learn more about what it meant to create a estate gift as well. Um, I will tell you this. My mom and dad belonged to St. James Episcopal Church in Wichita, Kansas, and they did a binder for life through their church. So I think you all have similar resources available in your denomination, and it was brilliant. When we needed it, we had all of my mom's resources in one place. And that's an opportunity for you to come alongside families and in that process to help them consider plan giving too. And so we worshiped with intention, we cared with intention, and we taught with intention all around plan giving. Does that answer your question, Joe?
It does. That was really good. So let's move on to honoring people who have made a planned gift. What are some of the ways that you recommend churches honor and tell those stories?
It's a great question. So, we at Resurrection Foundation, we had something called the Resurrection Foundation Legacy Society. And at the church I serve at now, it's called the Combs Legacy. And so it's an opportunity when people filled out their donor declaration to let us know if they'd like to be a member of the Legacy Society. And as a part of the Legacy Society, we simply said thank you multiple times throughout the year in really special ways. We often would host 1 to 2 events throughout the year at Resurrection Foundation for folks specifically who are either a member of the Legacy Society already or for persons who are considering becoming a member of the Legacy Society by creating their own planned gift. So it was a cultivation event and a stewardship event together. But we would have events like a concert, volunteers. This is all volunteer. We would have volunteers from the choir who would provide a concert, and we would have desserts at that concert, and then we'd have stories of impact shared between the songs. Another fun event that we've done here in Kansas City a few times while I was serving there, we would take day trips to museums in the city, and then we'd go have lunch together at one of our resurrection locations. But I mean, our scale can be scaled to the size of every church. You could take 10 people to a museum, you could take 5 people to a museum, or you could take 50. It doesn't matter. But during that lunch, after we did our special event together, we would again share stories of impact and share stories of why someone would want to become a person who creates a planned gift to support the church. Okay, next question. Do we honor people by name? So at the Resurrection Foundation, they at Resurrection Church, they actually have a policy not to put names on anything. And so at Resurrection Foundation, we didn't put names anywhere. We didn't list names, we didn't include names. We cared for those names at the Resurrection Foundation. We invited those donors to be a part of things. The church I'm serving at now, the Combs Legacy, we actually have a beautiful sculpture hanging on the wall, and it's called a tree of life sculpture. And on the leaves, we have the names of persons who have created a planned gift. I could go either way. Whatever you choose to do, you just have to be careful. If you're going to do anything with names on it, you have to make sure the donors want their name included on it. You must ask them in writing to have their name included. And if they say no, you need to honor that. And you need to make sure you don't miss any donors. And so that's really important. I do caution a lot of care. If you ever choose to put names on anything, that you make sure to do so with great care and great methodical steps to get there. Quarterly Legacy Society email updates. So for those members who join the Legacy Society, we would send out a beautiful update on the quarterly so that they could learn more about how their future generosity could make a difference. Again, telling story after story after story about how legacy giving is making a difference today can inspire others to be generous. And so those quarterly emails were just storytelling about how to be generous through the Resurrection Foundation with generosity that had already been given. And then throughout the year, we did holiday touch points. So this is not anything that anyone isn't already doing, but we would do email like cards around Christmas and Thanksgiving, just again letting our donors know how much they matter and how much their generosity is going to create an impact for God through the church. But I want to give you a little secret tip. And that is to not only choose the big holidays. I mean, everybody's thinking about being thankful around Thanksgiving, but what about choosing like around like Valentine's Day or All Saints Day or some of the holidays that maybe we aren't being inundated with thank you notes or with kind of Christmas cards or New Year's Day cards. But think about some of those holidays you might be able to come alongside your donors and just simply remind them how much you appreciate and love and cherish them and their generosity. And then once a year, we created an impact report. And this was just, again, an opportunity to tell stories. Ours were pretty polished because I was a full time employee, but they don't have to be polished. Again, it's about what you're saying, not about how slick it might look. And so having a newsletter come out that's specifically talking about legacy giving and creating a legacy, it can really help. And then it keeps people engaged with the church. Joe and I both want to make sure you know this, that if a donor makes the decision to create a planned gift to support your church, they will become more generous in all ways. This is a true fact. Joe has statistics, and I can tell you this from what I've met donors and seen them do is that when a donor decides, oh, I'm going to invest my estate in the incredible ministry of my church or my parish, that is like an incredible yes for them to become more generous in all ways. Maybe that's with their time, perhaps it's with their other financial treasures, but it is a step up in a way that someone says, this church matters, and this church matters especially to me. And so don't be afraid to engage plan giving, thinking they might not give to the annual campaign or they might not consider the capital campaign. Not true. They actually will become more generous in all ways. Right, Joe?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's one of the best ways to grow giving in the church is to invite somebody to invest more deeply. We see that with capital campaigns. We see that especially with planned gifts. People their money follows their heart, and when they invest their heart, their money will come. Which really pivots to uh, all this honoring that Ashley was talking about is also cultivation because these givers will, the more deeply invested they get, the more they understand the impact that their gifts are making, the more they hang out with other people who are excited about this. One, they become apostles for you and they tell their friends. And
Hmm.
two, these gifts grow. And so this is cultivation that is happening. You notice these are the existing uh, uh, donors to a planned gift. And a lot of churches, well, once I get the planned gift, they never are heard from again. And one of the things that really is important is how many times people will change their will as they get into older age. So you are protecting the gifts you have.
Hmm.
Secondly, you are cultivating passion around it. And what will also happen is they'll tell these stories to their heirs who will be excited that their parents made this gift. And so getting the gift is really the beginning of a good planned giving policy. Ashley, tell us some stories.
Sure. Okay, so I'm gonna touch on these stories. And then I was just scrolling through the chat and I see a couple of questions I hope to answer too. Um, so again, plan giving, it does not matter to me if a plan gift is $4,000 or $4 billion. It really doesn't, because it's not about the dollar amount, although billion is kind of impressive, but truly $4,000 is impressive and beautiful and kind and loving. It does not about that, but what it's about is someone coming forth to the altar or coming forth to the table and simply giving God a gift, an opportunity to say, you have blessed me and I want this gift to be a blessing for others. A couple of stories that stood out to me. Joe asked me to think of a few to share with you. One is a gentleman, his name was Billy, and Billy was single. He had never married at all. He was an older adult and he had a lot of health issues. He could barely get out of the house. He worshiped with us online. And our older adult ministry would go visit Billy on a periodic basis to check in and support and love Billy. Billy experienced God's love through the church. He was loved beyond measure by the persons who would come visit, by the persons who would call, by worshiping online with us. And Billy was, oh boy, he was so generous. He made the choice to work with his attorney and his trustee to leave the remainder of his estate. He didn't have any living heirs or even nieces or nephews to share his assets with. He left the remainder of his estate to the church. Every single dollar Billy had was offered to God through the church because the church had been the place that Billy knew without a doubt that he was incredibly, incredibly loved by God. And so Billy stands out to me as someone who could really, I mean, every time I say his name for the rest of my life, I will remember how beautiful his gift is because it is a gift of love. The second person that stood out to me that's really special is a person named David. Now, David lost the love of his life, Karen, to cancer. Karen went through a really, really, really hard battle with cancer. And so David decided to use the memorial gifts that had been given in Karen's name, along with some assets that Karen had, to create a fund at the Resurrection Foundation, again, over that $50,000 threshold. And actually, it's been endowed now. So it's over that $250,000 threshold for mission trip scholarships. So Karen was the daughter of missionaries raised in multiple countries outside of the United States. Her life had been formed in missions, and she was passionate about missions at Resurrection too. And so he created a fund in that donor restricted way to support mission trip scholarships for persons who wanted to travel internationally through the church but couldn't afford to on their own. And so his scholarship every year, or his fund every year, will create 15 or so scholarships for young adults, for church members who can't afford it on their own to go on these trips. Their lives are changed. And the lives of the persons that they meet while they're traveling and while they're serving alongside each other, their lives are changed. God is working through all of their lives because of David and his generosity in honoring Karen. The third one I would share is actually at my current church. So we received the gift of proceeds from the sale of real estate. We had a church member who had married, but they did not have living heirs. They didn't have children who were living to receive the remainder of their estate. Um, he gave his house to the church. The trustees sold the house. I believe the story is it happened before I got there. But the trustees sold the house, the proceeds were given to the church, and it has funded a local missions fund for our church. Again, it was an entire house in Kansas City, so it's a pretty significant gift, and it was able to fund an incredible fund that our congregation uses a 4% draw on every year to do many, many, many thousands of dollars of mission support in our community for local missions. Those are three that really stand out to me as vitally just golly, I love you, God. This is the way I want to share that with my church and have with you.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to give you a second to catch your breath. We're going to spend the last few minutes we have answering questions. Ashley, scroll through there and see some of the ones that you would like to answer.
Right.
First one that came in, and I'm giving Ashley a chance to look and catch your breath. The first one that came in was, when do you do a capital campaign versus a planned giving campaign? So capital campaigns are really good for one-time kind of purchase things like paying off debt or deferred maintenance or building something new, starting the infrastructure for something. They're really not good for um, things that have ongoing expenses. You need a way to fund, like if you start a ministry, part of a good capital campaign would say how you're going to fund that ministry. And because the capital campaign ends, then you've got that long-term issue there. Planned giving campaigns, when we're talking about planned giving, they are largely focused on future gifts. Now, one of the things that you can do in a capital campaign is say, 10% of every dollar that's given is going to go to our endowment, unrestricted or maintenance. If you're doing one for deferred maintenance, it might go to the maintenance fund. So we've been very successful in building current gifts to current endowed gifts with churches when we're adding that on, doing it. Where you're looking for current gifts to your endowment, and you're not doing a capital campaign, that really is what we would call a special campaign, because you're looking for a smaller set of highly motivated donors that you probably already know because you've been cultivated. If you're doing what Ashley talked about, and we would approach it in that direction. Our work at Horizons is mostly churches engage us around the marketing. Uh, we encourage you to use the free assets that are out there, and EPN can direct you to some of that to get your gift acceptance policies and some of that structural stuff set up. Your accounts and your accounting. Usually, churches can get that done for free for whoever's going to host those funds, from whoever's going to host those funds. But they tend not to do the stuff that Ashley's talking about. We will back up and look at to make sure your planned giving policies, your accepted gift acceptance policies, your forms are in alignment with your church's vision and what you're doing. But I want to encourage you to use the free resources that are out there first, and many of those can also help you with the marketing. So, Ashley, couple of questions you picked out you'd like to answer.
Yeah.
A
So
minute.
I saw a few. I'm hoping that most of this is already, that most of you have gotten a lot of what your questions answered already from my very fast talking. But one that I saw that stood out to me, Carol had asked about CGAs, charitable gift annuities. And that's when someone makes a gift up front while they're still living and breathing and beautiful and kind. And they give that to the church, or they give that to the person who holds their CGA, and then they receive a quarterly check, a dividend, or a check back on the quarterly basis from that, which they get to utilize. So they've given the gift up front, they get an incredible tax benefit from making that larger gift up front. And then quarterly, for the remainder of their lives, they receive a smaller check back that they can utilize for living on. At the end of their life, the remainder, the charitable gift annuity, the remainder is then given to the church. In the United Methodist Church Resurrection Foundation, we did not have a lot of charitable gift annuities. Most people were leaning into donor advised funds by the time I arrived at the Resurrection Foundation, but we did have the ability to offer charitable gift annuities through our local United Methodist Foundation. I would check in with Joe and Joe Swimmer and see if the Episcopal Church has some resources for persons that can help you offer those if you're interested. Donor advice funds is the direction that a lot of people are going in their living if they want to make an incredible generosity impact, where they set those up either through the denomination, like the Methodist Foundation where I served, we could set those up. But those were large gifts given up front. And then the donor got to advise how those resources were given through the donor advised fund. Most people were turning to donor advised funds, not as much charitable gift annuities. I don't know about your thoughts on that, Joe. What do you see right now?
So somebody's got to write those and manage those. So this is where outside foundations, whoever's holding, managing your funds, they probably have the ability to do that, but they're fairly complex instruments that the local church typically would not have the assets to manage because you're managing an investment for them. You're holding those funds. It requires a trustee. Um, so that's probably a better offline conversation. If you want to delve into that, you can just go to horizons.net, contact us, or look under I get the contact us as they come through, or you can look under the bios and go to my email address, and we can talk about a specific circumstance that you might want to use that. It
Right.
is the bewitching hour. And Joe, I want to come back to you and say thank you for having us on today. Ashley, you are amazing. I wish you could hear the crowd clapping because I imagine that that's exactly what's happening at this moment. And uh, again, you'll receive the recording. We'll look at the part where Ashley froze and find a way to insert any information that was lost. We will, I say we, EPN, will be sending that along with those two documents. But if you're interested in something else, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're happy to provide those kind of things to you as we have them available.
Awesome. My last word is to simply say, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord shine the Lord's face upon you and be gracious to you as you dream about, as you pray about, as you vision about how you might be about helping your congregation answer the question, how can we help God transform God's world through plan giving? Amen.